This is lesson 6-2, and it's area of rectangular prisms with fractional edge lengths. So fractional I have underlined right here. This is going to be anything less than 1. So that could be a fraction or also a decimal. So before we even get to the actual volume of the prisms, really what this is a review of fractions and decimals. So just a couple of things here. What is a whole number as a fraction? Do a couple of examples for you. For example, 4 is going to be 4 over 1. So we're thinking of it as 4 divided into one group is going to be 4. Or if we have 1, that's 1 over 1, that's its fraction. Or even a larger number like 27, that's 27 over 1. So any number divided by 1 is itself. So you can use that in this lesson. How do we multiply fractions? If this is not enough of a reminder for you, you can go back to Unit 3 in your math notebooks. We have lots and lots of notes about this, and we already did an entire unit about it, and that's in 3. How do we multiply fractions? Just straight across. So we have our numerator and our denominator multiplied by another numerator and denominator, and we just multiply them straight across. So it ends up being numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator. Let's do a couple of examples on those. For example, if I have 1/3 times 1/3, I just multiply straight across. If you've been in my class, you remember me saying there's no tricks to it. No tricks on this one. You just go straight across. So 1 times 1 is 1, and 3 times 3 is 9, and 1/9 is our answer. For another example, I could do 2/3 times 1/4, and there are no tricks. I just do the numerators times the numerator and denominator times denominator. 2 times 1 is 2, and 3 times 4 is 12. So this is an answer here, but hopefully you're recognizing that it's not reduced. So if I did want to reduce that, I'm looking here. The first thing I look for is, are they even numbers or are they multiples of 5? So I see that these are both even. I know that they can be divided by 2. Two divided by 2 is 1, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. I can't go any smaller than that. So this is a reduced answer. 2/12 is equal to 1/6. There was a test where we took your answers like this, but if your teacher asks you to reduce, it needs to be like this. Okay, so for an example with a prism, here I have a prism. It's 1 unit by 1 unit by 1/2 unit. So up here at the top, I have volume equals length times width times height, which we did yesterday in lesson 6-1. So I just need to multiply all of those together. So I'm going to do 1 times 1. Those are both whole numbers, so they're really just 1 over 1 times 1/2. And a lot of you can probably just recognize how you can do this really quickly. Or you can go through doing PEMDAS and actually follow the order of operations if you're using more complicated numbers. But I have 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1 times 2 is 2. So I end up with 1/2, and then I need to label it. This is not in inches or centimeters, it's just in units. So I can say it's units. I don't actually know how big it is. It might not be a real measurement. And then that is cubed because we're dealing with a 3D figure here. 3D, I'm using cubes to measure it. Those are 3D, so I have cubed. If you were on my Kahoot yesterday, you probably have that drilled into your head right now. Right, so this is multiplying fractions and then just applying that to finding the volume of the prism. Again, if you need more help on that, go back to your notes in Unit 3. I'm going to go to a new page because I don't have a lot of room left right here. If you want to keep going on the same page, that's fine. So we have 6-2 continued, and this is multiplying decimals. A reminder up here that volume is length times width times height. Okay, how do we multiply decimals? I wrote out 3 steps for you in different colors, and then we'll go through and do a few examples. So first, you multiply just pretending that there aren't even decimals there. If you've been in my class, you remember me saying that over and over. Just do it pretending that there aren't even decimals. Second step, then in the numbers that you multiplied, count how many numbers are to the right of the decimal or in a decimal place. And 3, last, slide your decimal that many places to the left. So however many you had to the right of the decimal, we're going to slide the decimal to the left. Again, you can go back to Unit 3 and see lots of examples of this if you need more help. Those are all in your math notebooks. Okay, so let's look at this example right here. I have 1.7 times 2.3. So I wrote this in red to show that I'm first just going to multiply them, pretending that there aren't even decimals. So I'll go through and do that. 3 times 7 is 21. 3 times 1 is 3 plus 2 is 5. 2 times 7, and of course make sure that you keep these all lined up in their columns. 2 times 7 is 14, carry the 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. So I just pretended I wasn't even dealing with decimals here. And I get 391. My second step is to count how many numbers are to the right of a decimal up here in the numbers I multiplied. So I have 2 numbers that are to the right of a decimal. Right now in this answer that I have, my decimal is here because when we have a whole number, the decimal is at the end. So currently my decimal is right here, but I'm going to slide it 2 to the left because I had 2. So 1, 2, and it ends right here. 3.91 is my final answer. Okay, so I want to show you a couple more. These two are related to each other, so I have one here and then one here because the math on it is a little bit longer. So I have 2.51 times 4. Again, I'm going to just multiply pretending that there aren't even decimals there. I'm going to do that with red. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. Now, following step 2, how many numbers do I have to the right of a decimal? Well, this number, I didn't write anything in the decimal places, but in this top number, I have 2. Oops. So right now, my decimal is right here at the end of the whole number, and I'm going to slide it 2 places right here, and it ends there. So my final answer is 10.04. So the third example that I have for you, it's related to this one. So a lot of you just had a really hard time wrapping your heads around not lining up the decimals, which is fine. If you want to line up the decimals, that's okay. You just have to remember that you need to fill these places. So I wanted to show you how it ends up working out anyways. So like here, I just had 2.51 times 4, and I left off the decimal places, so I wasn't counting anything to contribute to my slide. But right here, I lined up the decimals. If you want to do that, that's fine. If that's the way that your brain works and you can't get past that, that is okay. So let me go through and do the math on this really quickly. 0 times 1 is 0. 0 times 5, what's wrong color? Is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. 0 times 1 is 0. 0 times 5 is 0. And 0 times 2 is 0. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 5 is 20. And 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. So I really ended up doing the same math, but just adding in a lot more zeros here because of multiplying by these two columns first. So now that I add these, just following the same process. Okay, I have a much bigger number here as my final answer, 100,400 instead of 1,004, but they're similar. And then I'm going to count how many numbers I have to the right of a decimal. 1, 2. I added in decimal places here because I wanted to line those up. So now total I have 4. So if I come down here, my decimal is here right now, but I need to move it 4 places. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it ends right here. So look at that. I ended up with the same answer, 10.04. Okay, so as long as you are moving it as many decimal places as you have, you'll be okay. You really can't mess that up. Just following the process. Trust the process on that. And so now I have an example here. Uh-oh, it's almost out of view on my camera. Okay. I have a prism that is 0.3 by 0.6 by 1. So I'm going to do, I'll just pick 2 first. I'm going to have to end up doing 0.6 times 0.3 times 1. And that is going to be my volume, referring back to this. Length times width times height. Length, width, height. I did happen to write these in the right order, but it doesn't actually matter because of the commutative property, which order you multiply them in. So I will do 0.6 times 0.3 first. So 0.3 times 0.6. 6 times 3 is 18, so I'll carry the 1. 6 times 0 is 0, plus 1. And then I wrote the zeros in here, so just to be consistent, I'll go ahead and do the math on it. 0 times 3 is 0, but you guys can probably recognize that you don't need to do that. 0 times 0 is 0. Okay, so I end up with 810. I'm going to count how many things I have to the right of the decimal. I have 2 numbers to the right of the decimal. So I'm going to come down here. Right now my decimal is here, and I slide it 2 times. 1, 2. So I get 0.18. I'll just bring that over here. 0.18. And I still have to multiply by this 1. So I don't need to go through and do the math on that. I know that anything times 1 is just itself. So 0.18 is my final answer here. And don't forget I need to label it. I do have a unit. I have inches. And it is cubed. So that is as simple as that. It looks like a lesson in volume of prisms, but it's really just reviewing those decimals and multiplication and then applying it to the prisms. Okay, so remember that you can check your answers to the homework on Miss Billman's page. You can Google Whitney Billman 6-2, and then I also linked her answers in the lesson plans. Okay, so please have this done. I'll send this today. I'll send another one on Monday, and then please have your homework done on Tuesday so that we can do any questions on the Kahoot. Thank you.